Hello everyone, today we have a new patient here on the table, BMS SEPlos, because it was expected for quite a long time to be added to the list of those supported by ENSolarX device. And what is it? This is a device that we connect to our energy storage, to the inverter, and it downloads data from it on an ongoing basis and displays it to us on the applications anywhere via Wi-Fi, refreshing every few seconds. In one place we have data from the inverter, we have data from the BMS and from the energy storage. We can observe some graphs, we have options here, we can configure some parameters, and of course we can also control various outputs, outputs depending on the weather. We want to turn on a heater when we have too much energy or we don't want to give it to the grid. So today I will say it quickly, it won't be long episode, what has changed here about this SEPlos, how to configure it, how to connect it, and how generally what has changed in the latest version. Let's go. Well, as I said, we already have JK BMS on the list of supported energy storage devices. These generally all JK BMSs work on RS485 UR or with GPS connector, JK BMS, QECC, BMS, INT, BMS Daily, JBD, and so on. And now we have SEPlos has also joined because a few people asked about SEPlos. Even more than a few, I would say, and we have such a patient here. There are a few of these cables here, but as you can see, reverse engineering such a device is exactly what it means. That you have to wrap all these cables here and spend hours working on it, but we already have it. So the data is from SEPlos, and now how to connect it. Generally, all the ENSolarX devices from now on, when they are delivered to you, they will already have this protocol implemented. But if you have earlier versions, you can update them in versions 5 and 6 and connect to such a BMS. As you can see here, is the communication board from this SEPlos, and now we connect it to the RS485 socket, which is this. How do we connect it? Well, look, here we have two pins, they are written out. I will show you now. The pinout looks like this. This is of course the pinout of the BMS JK, but SEPlos has it identically. So both of these plugs 1 and 2 have under number 1 and 8. This is RS485B, under 2 and 7 this is RS485A. And here we have pins A and B written out in both of these plugs, and here are pins A2 and B2 of the A2 B2 connectors from these plugs, the first and second pin. Here is the white and red. The first one on the left is white, the second one is red, and they go. That's how they are connected to the 6. I will just add these switches. I don't know how is it in the other BMS, but if they are used for addressing, if we have a warehouse with several warehouses with complex SEPlos BMS, they are used to address this BMS in parallel mode. These switches are not used for setting addresses in communication mode with computer or with ENSolarX or some other systems. That's why these switches, if you don't set them like that, it should work for you. They are all set to 0 for me, but generally I don't know, maybe there are some other BMS models that need to set these. Maybe some firmware versions are different from the earlier ones. But in this particular one I have here, it seems that, if I'm saying correctly, V3 does not require setting this. This switch is for communication with ENSolarX. So all down, or if you have some BMS, some other firmware version, let me know in the comment too. Generally, now look in the application, a new function has entered the application in the options and see. First we have to set the address, only that here it is set to 2 because I have another device here. For SEPlos you have to set BMS Modbus address to 0. For JK you have to have 0 for SEPlos 0. Particularly for all BMSs the address should be set to 0 unless there are some BMS that respond to other addresses. This is this address. It is a function added only from this last version, and the same applies to the inverter communication protocol. You see there is D1 F3, and the addresses field has been added. Previously it was like the addresses were entered rigidly, and now you can set any address in ENSolarX. And just like before, now what I am going to say is very important. Previously it was hard-coded. If you had the P18 protocol, for most of the Chinese inverters there were no address there. This is kind of addressless communication. However, the rest of these addresses previously had address set, so if you do an update, after the update, if it works out for you, it may stop working for you, and you have to enter the appropriate address in this field and save the inverter. And now, what addresses? You previously had the addresses entered hard-coded. If you don't want to change anything in the inverter and it worked for you, well, for the Modbus and Modbus S2S protocol, previously there was one address. You enter 1 and save. For Growatt previously there were 11 addresses, so if you have Growatt you enter 11. If there was software, the address was 1. If volt or must, the addresses was 4. For the sensing, the address was 7, but now, as you can see, in this version you can define this address yourself. But if you don't want to change this inverter after the update, so that you still care, then here you have to enter the addresses that I mentioned a moment ago. Selecting your inverter model and click Save Inverter as far as the address fields are concerned. That's why from now on you will be able to set this address, because some people simply wanted to. Yes, this is kind of difficulty for those who don't want to set it, but you still have to set it in the inverter when connecting this device. Now you at least have control over what address each device works at. So when it comes to BMS, remember, in almost every case, whether it's SEPlos or JK, you give the address to 0, unless you have your system configured in such a way that requires a different address, but these are very sporadic cases and it probably doesn't apply to you. So generally, as you can see, you can connect everything. SEPlos can be used. Communication with it is already there, and as the time progresses, we will add more devices. So I suggest following the channel, because there is a lot of information on this subject, what this device can do, how to connect it, to what equipment, with what equipment it works. Besides, if you have a video, under each video there's a link, and in this link you can go to the website, and there you will find on the website a list of inverters that everything works with. There is a large list of inverters here. Some have been added here, some MA, Anerna, and we will have to supplement this list, but practically there is already a lot of it. So I invite you to read, I invite you to connect. Of course, let me know in the comments whether you connected, what problems you had. If something happens, let me know in the comment. I will try to help, although I think I have explained everything here, but who knows, maybe some more skeletons will come out of the closet, so write it in the comments. So what? I'm curious about your opinions, what you think about it. Give us a thumbs up. Thank you for subscribing. So what? We hear each other in the next materials. So what? Plug in SEPlos. Greetings to all. Take care. Bye.